This is the Consciously Created brand with me, Kirsty McGill. The Consciously Created brand is for the artists, creators, makers and curators, consciously creating businesses that aim to do better, putting planet and people over profit. Hello, so today's episode, I think I'm going to call it a Monday Musing, which is something that came to mind. But I thought today it's maybe not as specific, it's not as structured, and I'm going to just see how it goes. I'm recording this episode and it's Friday and it's going to go out on Monday, which when I started this, I managed to kind of get a few episodes ahead of when I wanted to launch it, and I was a couple of weeks ahead each time, so it's a bit annoying. And I've got ones that are coming up, but I specifically wanted to post this one today. However, I don't know, I've been a bit stuck this week and I haven't had much time, and it's one of those life getting in the way things. I was also doing a free challenge as part of Ruth Poundwhite, who is a business coach. She did a free training but offered a VIP upgrade, which was access, which was amazing, and you got to ask like your kind of own questions in there. But it was also, along with all the stuff going on this week, it was then just that extra bit draining for me personally, kind of being engaged in a group like that maybe, or just digging into stuff that the topics kind of brought up. But anyway, I think it was a really great experience, and I do recommend going and seeing the type of work she does if you relate to being a soulful entrepreneur or quietly ambitious, which is the name of her book podcast. So that's something that I personally relate to. And yeah, let's get into the episode. I mean, I can't believe that we're almost at the end of January now. We're a month into 2023, and it took me a good chunk into this month to actually get around to planning kind of for my year, or at least when I say planning, I really mean sort of setting some intentions and thinking more like quarter one. Partly because of my current sort of phase of life that I'm in, it's quite hard to plan ahead, and I'm sure like a lot of you, actually you can have all the good intentions, but stuff changes as the year goes on, and who knows what will come up. I mean, gosh, recent years alone go to show you can never be quite sure. However, I know for some people that January can be more about setting these goals, big goals, big intentions for the year, and then cracking on with sort of smashing those goals. And that's not really going to work for me. But wherever you are on that scale, my aim is to offer some ideas with this episode of things that have helped me be productive, even whilst I have been side hustling and working very limited hours, because I am a stay-at-home mum. I work a part-time job and I'm also doing this. So I'll be covering some ideas for those of you looking to grow in 2023 from my perspective, including how I've gone about sort of setting some intentions and planning, and the things that help me be as productive as I can be. And I'm not trying to advocate for like push and being super productive, because I think that's not for everyone. It can be really hard, and rest is important too. So it's about setting yourself in a manageable way and what's actually achievable, and that's something I find quite hard, but I'm trying to get better at just scheduling maybe a couple of things that I need to get done, and it makes it more achievable. So finding ways to actually organise myself has been really important for me over this past year since I started new studio, with bearing in mind with everything going on. And quite quickly I discovered Notion, which hadn't been around previously, and when I was doing freelancing before. So I don't know exactly when they launched, but suddenly it seemed like a few people were talking about it, and it takes a tiny learning curve, I think, but then as soon as you get used to it, well, I personally love it because it has the power of a word processor. You can use it just to write your notes, but everything can like link together. It's searchable, and it has database functionality. So you can create databases that then link out to other things. What I mean by this is, say for where I've set a project, I can then use a relation field and link it to different tasks, which then means you can see which project it's linked with, and kind of on and on. Like I could break down the task into to-dos, or I can link it with a goal as well, and then you could create another dashboard type thing that will pull in your daily to-dos through looking it up in a database. Yeah, I just think the potential there is amazing. And as someone that's always really struggled with planning, I've gone through various things. If you're watching this, you might see my new wall calendar, because I do like to see stuff visually, but I'm someone that's like tried things like bullet journaling, and actually I stuck quite well with that for a time, but then once the novelty wore off, I was over it. But I've had like desk planners. I've tried blocking out time on my calendar, on my phone, or like, on a Google calendar. What else have I tried? I used to use Asana. I did quite like Asana, but this for Notion for me gives me so much more flexibility. So that's why I love it. And I think the cool thing as well is that if you are someone that gets a little bit bored of a system, or maybe when it's like kind of a rigid and you have to do it in the way that the program or the journal or the planner tells you, the cool thing with Notion is that you can customize it and you can keep iterating on it. So I had set up a certain way to do my tasks, and then when I realized like things weren't really working that way, I found a new way to do it, and I'm able to adjust that and tweak it to work for me. And you can also have the fun of like adding colors to the text and adding emojis and stuff, so it can look more visually interesting too, and you can embed various things. So yeah, if that sounds interesting to you and you haven't looked at Notion yet, I think it's such a cool tool. And another interesting thing, they've just launched, they've had a waitlist for a little while about trying their new AI, and I haven't actually delved into it yet. And obviously we are at a point now where AI tools are becoming more and more talked about. I think there's a lot of potential for them, and obviously I know there's the ethical side I'm sure everyone's seen, but I think the potential for maybe getting ideas, or for me I'm thinking, okay, I can take my transcript of this audio and then I can maybe run it through some AI tool to like polish it up into the blog post to fix the spelling mistakes without me having to manually go through it, and to make the sentences sound better and read better as a blog post. So to list some of the things that I actually use it for, I use it for planning, which is goals, and then break down into quarters, so like quarterly planning and reflection, monthly planning, projects, tasks. I have trackers on there that I use for things like daily habits. Not that I'm actually great at remembering to either do the habit or track it, so I think that's something that as I maybe have a bit more time, I'd like to try and use more to remember to do things like the reading and the journaling and meditating that I know helps me, but I don't always do. But also you can use it to track other things. So I've got a tracker that I use, and I log my website views, I log my social media stats, and I use it to track leads as well that I've had in, and clients and sales. The potential there is really cool. So I think that's a really good tool as well for tracking the stats that you need to keep on top of within your business. So like the things I've just listed, you should be tracking the visitors to your websites, the clicks, the sales, and of course things like your marketing as well, and seeing what's working well and what's not. And then if you've got the data, you can look to tweak things. What else do I use it for? So speaking of marketing, I use it as a kind of content planner. And again, the power of the database really helps with this. So I have a kind of central database that I have different categories that I assign. So if I come up with an idea, I can assign it as like, oh, I think this would be a blog post. I think this would be a podcast episode. I think this one will work as something on social media. like you can tag, Instagram or Facebook. So I've set all that up. And then what I do as well is I've created like landing pages where it pulls through just the things specific to, say, my podcast. And I've created like a little sidebar that has various links. I'm trying to think of an example now off the top of my head. Okay, let's go back to the social media one. In my sidebar there, I've got pages that go to hashtags or calls to actions and things like that. Any notes, just any extra information that's good to have to hand. And then I use a database view that pulls in just the social media posts from that central database. Another thing that I haven't mentioned is that Notion can have a calendar view as well, which obviously as you're planning your content creation and you're planning your marketing, you can use that to kind of see when different things are going out. You could use it to plan like a specific campaign. You'd be able to say, oh, my blog is going up on this day, and then here's the social media posts from it, and see that all planned out. And you can then get a really good overview of like where any gaps are, or making sure that you've got things going out, you've got marketing happening. Another example is I've created a kind of business hub. So obviously, if at some point I wanted to have some team members, or if I was working with a VA, it's somewhere that you can use to store business processes or information. You could put things like your brand guidelines in there, so that anytime you took on a team member or you had someone working with you, you could link them to those pages to see any relevant information. You can keep a copy of things like your business plan, services and processes, any email templates. You could use it to track your business expenses, things like that. One thing that I've also more recently done is create a hub or page for different courses and trainings that I'm interested in taking or that I've purchased. And then I can use it to view them, to view any notes I've made, or just the links and details so that I can access them. It could be quite helpful for like planning if you are kind of creating a bit of a learning path for yourself, and you could assign dates even. Anyway, without this episode turning into a complete Notion fangirl moment, I think the thing is about finding a system that works for you, of course. And whether that is writing things down and like bullet journaling, or a structured journal, or big paper calendar, or a Google calendar, or something like Notion or Asana. It's finding what works for your brain and using it to help you plan for your year, plan for your goals, plan for things you're working towards. One of the things I wanted to talk about actually was how I have gone about planning this year. And I keep saying this year, but I haven't really fully planned this year. So I've kind of set some intentions for the year. And I actually listened to Alice Benham's podcast. I'll put in the show notes which one. She talks through her method of planning. So I did kind of follow that. I set 3 words that were kind of my intentions for the year. And then I've also been listening to some of Wandering Aimfully's content, and they've had some handy stuff about goal setting and then breaking it down into tasks and projects. So I followed some of that too. And again, I'll put a link in the show notes because they've also got some examples of how they use Notion, which I found quite helpful to further refine how I was breaking down my goals and projects and tasks. So what I have done is set some Q1 goals in particular, and then I broke down into which months I was intending to focus on different things, specifically where it relates to more of a project type of thing. Now I've got a few things in mind, and I knew I wouldn't be able to get them all done in January, so I can assign the month, and then when it comes to that month, then I can look at which week is best and which day. So it helps me kind of know that I'm coming to it without it just being on my mind. I can think, okay, no, I'm going to do that in February. And then, like I say, I'm doing it week by week as well, kind of breaking down, okay, I think I'll try and do this in the 3rd week of January, the 4th week of January. Then when it comes to the week, that's when I can look more at what's a realistic day that I'm likely to get this done on, and how many things can I achieve in a day. And at the moment, for me, maybe that's only looking like focusing on one thing a day. Before I was doing more and I was able to, and at the moment my time seems to have compressed a little bit, so maybe it's one thing a day. and know that I get that done. So if you're working on a side hustle, I think that's really important. It's about, to your best of your ability, planning and thinking how you can be productive, finding the way that works for you to break down what you need to do and to keep doing it as much as possible. If you are only doing it on the side, then you do have to think what you can actually get done. And even if you're not, if you're full-time, well, actually, you still probably only have likely a small amount of time for things like marketing tasks, for admin tasks. A lot of the things that I've been thinking about recently, and it's been something I've sort of been reflecting on for a while, maybe sort of from December, as it kind of becomes that reflective time of year, but then also thinking now ahead in January of like, how should 2023 be? And I've been thinking a lot about how business can feel fun for me, or doing kind of the things that I enjoy and following that, rather than pushing the things that I'm not enjoying so much. Now, if you've listened to some of my other podcast episodes, or if you're on my newsletter list, or follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen that Instagram's something that I've kind of put a bit on pause, really, because I wasn't seeing good results for the output, but also it's just taking up a lot of headspace for me at this point, because you can't just post on there, you do have to engage. And as someone that is quite quiet and introverted, that is quite draining for me, especially with my work and home and life situation as well, to find that extra energy to do all of that. But there's always other ways as well. Even as a product business owner, you could look at things like advertising, whether that's online advertising or in media, printed media. If you found a really niche magazine that a lot of your customers would be reading, then that could be a good avenue for you. There's still potential there. The paid sort of social media adverts can be really effective as well. I mean, I don't know about you, but I do get targeted with different adverts, and they can be really targeted, like I say, and then you end up wanting that thing. So they do work. It's very dependent on your strategy and your budget, and also the type of audience and thing you're targeting. It completely depends how much your ad spend is actually going to be. But it could be something worth looking into if you wanted to reduce your social media. I agree with what I think a lot of marketing experts would say, and that's email lists are so powerful, because you get directly into people's inboxes. So they give their email to you, maybe because you've incentivized with a discount or a freebie of some kind, a lead magnet, and then you can email them and you can ensure they're getting the type of products that they want to see. They're reminded that your business, your brand exists, and that could be on a weekly basis, it could be fortnightly. At the moment, I've only been emailing once a month, but I'm looking to increase that. But especially, I think, for if you're a product-based business and you regularly have new stock incoming, then you could definitely be sending out regular newsletters with, look what this new thing is in, or just talking about different aspects. Like everything, it might not be for everyone, but blogging is an avenue as well for marketing, and this can work equally well for service-based businesses, for product-based businesses as well, I think, because it does depend, and it might be more lifestyle content, so it can be more supportive of your brand, maybe in that instance of a product-based business, rather than being really SEO optimized. But you might be able to, and it does depend on what you do and what your product is. So if you've got quite a niche product or something quite different about it, or a way that you can talk about it in a way that's SEO focused, then a blog could be a good avenue for you. There's always things like getting some PR and publicity, which could obviously give you a massive boost and visibility. It might not be easy to get featured, but it's definitely something to try. Maybe you could also look at being on different marketplaces, things like the Not on the High Street or Etsy even. They have a built-in set of buyers. They have people that are coming to them to look for things like gifts, to look for treats for themselves, and it could be another way to help get your brand out there in that growing phase. So yeah, these are just some ideas. I'm not like a marketing consultant. I do work in a marketing agency, and I've obviously got a background of that, but I would say my thing is designing compelling marketing, designing and being strategic within that marketing and the strategy. If one of the things you're kind of conscious of going into this year, or now we're in this year, is knowing whether your brand, website or marketing could be improved, but not sure how. Maybe you have an inkling that you could be doing better, or maybe you are sure but don't know what the next step could be. You've possibly been asking around what people think of this or that, and you aren't really any clearer about what you actually need to do. What will improve your brand? What will improve your marketing? What will improve your website? An audit will assess your brand identity and web presence to provide you with guidance and suggestions that you can either implement yourself, take on to another service provider, or book me to work with you on. It's hard to be objective, so get clarity on what isn't working, and you can book your audit at elmleafstudio.com, and I'll put the exact link in the show notes as well. Something you need to try and get clear on when you're looking at your goals and what your vision is for this year is what will help you. Do you need to look at your branding? Do you need to improve your website? Can it be optimizing the things that you are doing, whether that is your marketing or your current website? Maybe you don't need a redesign, maybe you don't need a rebrand, but a tweak, a refresh. Maybe it's looking at optimizing how well your website performs, whether that's conversions, or even if you do have a goal to be a bit greener this year, can you make your website improvements so that your site is faster and lighter and make your website greener, which is an episode I'm going to do soon, is some ideas. But of course, if you were interested as well, I have a VIP day, and that could be something that we could look at, ways to improve your website within that day, or potentially onto a bit more of a project if you did want it as part of a redesign too. So get in touch if that's something of interest. But outside of those things as well, like, do you need support? Do you need to look at a community that you can be a part of? I've really found in the past year that that's been something I've enjoyed being part of, got a lot out of, and it can lead to business as well. It can lead to those connections that get you opportunities, of course, but it's just about getting support for yourself too. Maybe it's looking at hiring a coach, a business coach, a marketing coach. Maybe you just need to do a VIP day and sort some things out. So try and get clear on what's actually going to help you going forward this year. Because if you know the things that you need to work on, maybe that's mindset as well, then you can go and make a plan to work on that, to set yourself up for the best year. So yeah, all of this kind of wraps up again. Like I said, it's about, for me, thinking about how can I make my business joyful? How can I be myself and do this? And what's the right strategies for me? It's not about a one size fits all. It never is. And you need to be doing the things that help make your business, your brand work for you. I've got an upcoming episode which I'm really excited about. I talked to Karen Webber from Goodness Marketing, and she's all about ethical marketing and doing it in a way that feels joyful and does good and is good. We had such a great chat. I think you're going to love it. So look out for that one, that will be coming out soon, especially if marketing's something that you want to work on this year. So for this week, I've picked FIDC, maybe, a Notion template called Life Planner. I'll put the links again in the show notes, because I probably pronounced that wrong, maybe didn't explain it well, but that was a really good starting point for me to break down my goals. And it has built-in templates that you can look at setting your overall goals. You can then think about which quarter you want to work on that. And also you assign it to like different areas of your life, such as like careers or life and wellness. So it really helps you to see what you're trying to achieve, basically. I adapted it partly with another template that I'd previously bought, and just to suit myself, which is obviously the cool thing about Notion. You can edit the templates. So yeah, this episode was probably a little bit more rambly. I hope you found it helpful and gave you some things to think about. Like I said, there's going to be some links for the things that I've mentioned. If anything here has got you thinking, or if there's anything you'd like to share, then I'd love to hear from you. I'm accepting questions as well for potentially a Q&A style section on this podcast. Now, obviously, if no one submits anything, then let's Pretend that never was said. But if you do have a question about your brand or website or marketing and design, art and illustration even, I haven't really talked about that yet, but outside of my design work, I am an artist and an illustrator. If you want to talk about ethical business, greener marketing, greener websites, any questions kind of along those lines, if it fits within the like conscious brand bubble, and I'll see what I come up with for an answer. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I want to leave with one last thing, and that is that I've now created a resource library on my website. So if you sign up to my newsletter, you get access to that. And it includes things like a website planning guide. I've got some worksheets in there like brand reflections. So if you are kind of reflecting on your brand ahead of this year coming up, we're now in January of course, then you can get access to that too. I've got in there an email marketing like platform tracker. So if you're thinking about different ones, and I'm just going to be adding to it as and when I'm able to create different resources. It's also got a Canva template for customer persona. So if you haven't really like dialed in and got down who that customer persona, then that's a template that you can use to start figuring that out. If you go to elmleafstudio.com/newsletter, that's where you can find the form to sign up. You will be obviously subscribed into my email list. Type of things I talk about are the type of things that I'm talking about here, so if you like this, then you'll enjoy the newsletter too. Of course, you can unsubscribe at any time, and if you did just want to receive those things and you don't want to be on a list and you don't even want the faff of joining and then unsubscribing, send me a message and I'll get you access. That's absolutely fine. I think I've covered everything that I want to talk about. This has got kind of longer than I thought it was going to. It turns out I can get talking. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. You can find the show notes at elmleafstudio.com/podcast. I'd love to connect over on Instagram, and that's at elmleafstudio. If you'd like to stay updated, you can also join my newsletter, and if you go to elmleafstudio.com/newsletter, you can sign up there, and you'll also get access to my free resource library. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Consciously Created Brand.